Hi, welcome back to the Pathogen Murder Mystery Whodunit series, where we take reads from a mystery pathogen and try to figure out who they are. Today, we're going over the assembly results. I know you've been very excited because it was sort of a cliffhanger with the last episode. You got to see the job submitted, but you couldn't see the results. Well, I'm going to try to make you feel better about everything and show them to you right now. So remember, these are the things we've been stepping through. We had reads, we looked at the quality, they look pretty good. We submitted the reads to a service that estimates what's there, and that came back with Enterobacteriaceae, and there was a whiff of E. coli. Actually, it was more of a lift. There was some pretty significant read alignment to E. coli. And one thing we didn't see was a lot of reads to other stuff. We submitted the reads to a serotyping service for E. coli, and it came up with O104H4. So it's looking at the O antigen, and that was type 104, and then the H antigen, which is part of the flagella, and that was part 4. And then we generated the assembly. So here we go. We're ready to go. I get this question all the time when I work with people. How do I know if my assembly is any good? In fact, I got a question from a user just the other day about that. And this is pretty much what I told them. Within the assembly, you can run something called a QUAST report, and it gives you a whole bunch of information. But some of the things that I use to judge it are the number of contigs, how big the largest contig is, and the total length. Is the length of the assembly coming up being close to what I think this pathogen should be or this genome should be? One way you can visualize, this is just totally eye candy, but sometimes it's very pretty. I can't imagine really using this for much of anything other than it's just kind of pleasing to look at. This is called a bandage plot, and it's a program for visualizing an assembly plot, and it uses this graph layout algorithm, and it makes connections between the contigs. This one looks really good. It looks like it has 2 contigs. Most of them don't look that way, especially when it's your data and you really care about it. Often it's pretty messy. So I thought I'd just show you what a nice one looks like so that you're not, well, you're going to be disappointed to see what they normally look like anyhow, but this is something they can aspire to. Let's go in and look at that mystery pathogen and look at the assembly for it. So I'm going to get out of this, and we're going to go here. And, well, this one completed pretty recently. So from my jobs page at BBBRC, remember we talked about that before, I can highlight this row and then click on the view icon. And this gives me information about my assembly job, including how long it took to run once it got going, which 13 minutes isn't bad. So this is a contig file that you could submit to different services for annotation or for genome alignment or whatever. But this is where within the assembly report, that's where we're going to get to the meat and bones of this, and it's going to tell us how good our assembly is. So we highlight the row by clicking on it and then click the view icon, which we're doing here. And here is the assembly report, and see, this is what I told you. It's interesting to look at, and you kind of look at it and the colors are nice and stuff, but what does it mean? That's the picture of it, the bandage plot. And then it tells me how the assembly process ran. It tells me how many polishing rounds ran. It tells me that it filtered on contigs. One thing that's good to note, if you were ever going to publish on this thing, it will also tell you what the assembler was and which version it was. So that's always good if one was to publish on it. But this is the meat and potatoes of it, the QUAST report. And so it's not pretty, but it's informative. This is, to me, some of the most important parts of it. The contigs, 275 contigs. Not great, but I've seen a lot worse. And you know what? You're probably not going to publish on this. You just want to be sure that this is a good one that you could see a good fingerprint for. So if it was something like 5,000 contigs, and believe me, I've seen those before too, that's where I'm starting to say, I wouldn't do it. Actually, anything over 1,000 contigs makes me worry, and I don't really look at those in the analysis. And then I also look at the longest contig. So not great, but not bad. It's not up in a million base pairs, but okay. And then the length. So here's the total length. So in genome lengthening, we would say this is 5.25 MB per million base pairs. And that is pretty much right within the target of what we would expect this genome to be. So I'm thinking that this is pretty good. There are some other things that they use to estimate quality of the genome, but those are kind of archaic. If you really want to know what those things mean, go ahead and email me. I actually have some slides because I thought if I have to learn it, you guys have to learn it. And then this morning I relented and said, you know what? It's so old and nobody really talks about it that much. So I'm not going to make these guys do it, but we could do it if you wanted to. And then saying that it trimmed the reads, and there you go. So that's it. So we saw it, we got to see the cost report, we got to see the bandage plot, and then next time we really get into annotation. So when I told you that person emailed me and said, how do I know if my assembly's any good? And they had used 2 different assembly programs. I said, okay, look at how many contigs there are, the size, and then I said, go ahead and annotate it so you can see if there are differences between the genes within it. But actually, in that case, their contigs were so different. It was 5 versus 150. So it was clear to me right away that the 5 was the best one because the sizes were similar. And so next time, we're going to step through annotation. And I want to point out, right, so far it's pretty easy. You haven't had to code a single thing, and that's going to continue. So see you next time. Bye.